Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's time to recap a little bit. I'm usually pretty transparent with you guys whether things are going good or bad, so I'm happy to report right now things are going pretty well. Going into this session, which happened last Friday at the Gardens, as you guys saw, I was on a 15-win streak, which I think might be the longest that I've had so far, so that's great. I'm not trying to brag or anything like that, but when short-term variance goes well, I'm going to share it with you guys just like when it's the opposite. However, as you guys saw in the title, which probably already spoiled it, this session put an abrupt end to the win streak. I don't really love playing in LA, to be honest with you guys. As you can probably tell, I don't go that direction much for a few different reasons. Number one being the structure is terrible, and also the rake is brutal. I played the 3-5 no limit, where you can only buy in for 60 big blinds, and also every hand gets $2 dropped no matter what, even if you chop. I didn't really adjust well to these shallower stakes, coupled with the fact that I didn't really play well and didn't really run that great either. As you guys know, that usually amounts to a losing session, but luckily got it all on camera so you guys can get, at the very least, some entertainment value out of it. So not the funnest of sessions by any means, but in case you guys didn't know already, the only reason I went was because Brad Owen said he would be there that day and get drinks and hang out with whoever was there at the time. So figured it'd be cool to catch up with him and meet anyone who was there. So yeah, all in all, really fun night actually. The only thing that didn't go well is the poker itself, but like I said, when things are going good, I'll tell you guys, and when things go badly, I'll tell you guys as well. Let's jump into the hands, play 3-5 no limit as mentioned, in for 300. Let's see what we can do. Alright, so here we go. First hand of the night, playing 3-5 no limit, and we look down at ace queen offsuit from under the gun. So I open it up to $20 and get 3 callers, 2 in position and 1 in the blinds. So 4 ways to a flop of ace 8-5, 2 clubs and 1 diamond. Checks to me and I bet around half pot and get called by just the first player next to act. The other 2 players fold. So heads up to a turn, which isn't great. It's the 7 of clubs, but I've been doing a little bit of studying this month, getting into the lab a little bit, and something I've been leaning more towards is still going for value even when some draws come in, like a flush draw, especially when we have a blocker to that draw, in this case the queen of clubs, which is much more relevant than, for example, the 2 or 3 of clubs. I want to continue betting and get max value from weaker aces, so I continue for $60, and once again my opponent makes the call. River seems like a good card. It's an offsuit deuce, so 7-6, which is the most obvious straight draw, missed, and most other aces shouldn't improve, like ace jack or ace 10 for example. So aside from a flush, I don't think we're beat here hardly ever. So again, for the same reasons as I bet on the turn, I decide to put in another value bet here for 105. Unfortunately, our opponent doesn't waste too much time in jamming all in for a total of 190. So around 80 for me to call. Pretty annoying spot because even though we're getting such an amazing price, this is almost never a bluff. So unless he's somehow going crazy and shoving with a weaker ace, we're just beat here almost every time. I got a little stubborn here and made the call anyway, just because, again, the price was so good, but our opponent shows king 4 of clubs for the nut flush, and we managed to double him up. So in this exact case, obviously, I look like a complete idiot going for 3 streets of pretty thin value, but for the most part, it's been paying off to just continue barreling with good hands, even when certain draws come in. Obviously, sometimes you'll just run into it like I did here, but all the other times you'll be getting value that most other players aren't going for. Shortly after that, I opened 10-9 of spades from middle position, again to $20. And just like last hand, I get 3 callers, so we go 4 ways to a flop, which comes king, queen, jack with 2 diamonds. So we flopped the bottom end of the straight on a pretty connected board. So when the action checks to me, I think I should have sized up here a little bit, but I decided to bet $40 and got 1 caller, who just happens to be the same player from the previous hand with the king 4 of clubs. So heads up to a somewhat gross turn, the 5 of diamonds, and after seeing how wide this player is playing pre-flop, and also considering that this time we have no removal to the diamonds, I think he can certainly have flushes here, so not trying to make the same mistake twice. This time I just had to slow down and check, but he pretty quickly checks it back. The river is also kind of gross in the jack of hearts, so a lot of 2 pairs now improve to a full house. I don't like how I played this river. I think it should be a bet fold. If he had a flush, I think he'd be betting on the turn for value. So unless he improved to a full house, we should have the best hand here. I should have bet here to get some value from a king or maybe king queen. But instead, I quickly checked and he checked it back and actually did end up having king queen. Interesting that he didn't put in a raise on the flop, especially with players behind him. Obviously, that would have resulted in a likely all-in situation with how shallow stacks are. A little bit annoying to get a run out like this, and obviously a little annoying to miss, I think, a small value bet on the river. But as played, at least we take it down and move on to the next hand. In the next delightful poker hand, we see an under the gun open to $20, and I look down at pocket 10s on the button. The under the gun player started with around 220, so I think I want to put in a small 3-bet and isolate this player. If I call, the blinds will have a pretty good price, and it's the Gardens after all. The blinds don't really fold, right? So I make it $65. The blinds do end up folding, and after some contemplation, the under the gun player ends up just making the call, which I didn't really expect, to say the least. He's putting in like a third of his stack, which should be pot committing, and he's going to be out of position. So to be honest, I just expected a fold or shove, but like I said, it's the Gardens. So heads up in position to a flop of 5-3 deuce with 2 diamonds. He checks it over to us, and as mentioned, he has around 150, which is pretty much a pot-sized bet. I think we're almost always ahead, so it's a question of setting up 2 streets or just sending it in right here. I think the problem with 2 streets here is there's so many nasty turn cards that could kill the action, like a diamond or a one-liner to the straight, overcard to our 10s, which honestly wouldn't really scare me, but could certainly allow our opponent to fold. So with all those things in mind, I decided to just send it in right here, not expecting him to fold any kind of draw or overpair, but after some deliberation, he actually does end up folding. Pretty weird hand, but happy to take it down nonetheless. One orbit later, this fun hand happens. There's a few limps and the cutoff makes it $30 on my right. He's a pretty competent player from the small sample size that I'd seen so far, so I think he could be isolating these limpers fairly wide, especially in such late positions. So cutoff versus button, when I look down at ace queen, I think it's certainly worth a 3-bet. Again, considering this player could be pretty wide here. Against some other players, probably not recommended, but I make it $90 to go. It folds back to him and he jams, but only has 200 total. So although I don't expect to be in amazing shape, there's not much thought to be had here, given how much we've already put in the middle. So I quickly make the call. The flop comes all rags, the turn is a king, but the river's a queen. Feeling pretty good about our hand. We beat all the under pairs to the queen, obviously, but unfortunately our opponent rolls over ace king. So maybe he doesn't really isolate as wide as I thought, or he just happened to be at the top of his range. Don't really hate the 3-bet. Certainly wouldn't hate just a flat either, but yeah, not running great. Hoping to turn it around moving forward. Oh, did I say turn it around? I'm sorry, I meant completely butcher a hand, okay? Here we go. Under the gun opens to $20. The hijack makes the call. I'm in the cutoff with ace queen of spades. Again, I consider 3-betting, but given the obvious recent hand, I decided to just flat this time. Unfortunately, the button calls on my left, so we're not going to have position on all 3 streets, which again is one of the problems with not 3-betting pre-flop. But at least we have a pretty good hand, especially multi-way. So 4 ways to a flop here, which comes 10-6-6 rainbow with 1 spade. The pre-flop raiser checks, and this time the hijack on my right bets $35. I have what I think is a pretty decent read on this player, and I'm mostly pegging this to be a 10 and a 10 only. There's not really any draws I think he'd be betting multi-way, and a 6 I think he would either bet a little bigger or just get tricky and check. So all these things considered, I decided to float with 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw, and obviously some playability in position. The problem is that the button ends up calling on my left, so she could easily be sandbagging a 6 here. The under the gun player folds, so we go 3 ways to a turn, which comes a king of clubs. This time the hijack checks, again consistent with him having a 10, and I think this is where I make a pretty big mistake. If I was going to bluff at this pot, it would have to start now with around a half pot size bet and then sending it in on the river to represent a 6. The issue is I was a little worried about the button having a 6, but much to my frustration, the button quickly checks back. So obviously she doesn't have a 6, the player on my right doesn't have a 6, and now it's really hard for me to represent that I had a 6 because for the most part I would be betting that on the turn. River comes a brick, hijack checks again, and now I decide to finally pull the trigger, which makes no sense after having checked the turn. I bet 120, the button quickly folds, and the hijack goes into the tank. I don't really like my line. I'm not representing much, even though he has a 10, and it's still, I guess, a little bit hard to call. Unfortunately, he ends up thinking it through and making the call. I tell him Jack 10 is good, but my read was way off because he had Queen 10. Poker's hard sometimes, but in this hand, it wasn't that hard. I just really messed it up. Not my brightest moment, and after this hand, I decided to just call it a session. Wasn't really in the right mindset, obviously wasn't playing very well either, and honestly just wasn't having that much fun, which, as corny as it sounds, I feel like this game should be fun. It is just a card game after all, and the second that's not the case, I think just getting up and waiting to fight another day is the best option. So that's what I did. At the very least, I hope you guys enjoyed these hands. It's time for some beers. Hopefully Brad pays because he's got a little more money than me sitting a few tables away at the 5-10-20. All right, that's a wrap. All right, so just wrapped up the session. I got fucking wrecked, but at least I met a bunch of cool people. Let's get home. So when it was all said and done, got into the game for 8 or 900, and well, this video didn't have a cashing out clip, so that tells you how much I was out for. However, like I said earlier, ended up hanging out with Brad for a while and a few other guys, had a really good time, and look forward to meeting more people who watch the vlogs in the future. The next vlog coming up is gonna be from AGUA Caliente. I think I haven't been there in a while, and I don't think I really did it justice in the first vlog, which I think was one of the earlier episodes. Most of you guys have probably not seen that one, I'm guessing. So I'll be heading out there, I think probably this weekend at some point, not too sure. If you guys are interested, by the way, in meeting up with me while I'm playing, I usually post where I'm at on Instagram. So also, as you guys know, if you saw the previous vlog, I'll be heading out to Cleveland and Detroit, possibly Pittsburgh, that's in the air. But that trip is happening at the end of October. So if you guys are interested in linking up over there, again, just shoot me a message through Instagram. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the support through the ups and the downs. By the way, that $900 loss at the Gardens was fixed last night at Morongo. Ended up making around $1,200 in a few hours. So No worries, the heater seems to be alive and well. Repaired the garden situation yesterday. Looking forward to playing more poker this week, and again, I'll see you guys at Agua Caliente. If not, you guys will see what goes down there in the next vlog. Thanks again for watching, guys. Good luck at the tables. I'll see you next time. Peace.